Se vi accomodate tutti, incominciamo la seconda sessione. Grazie.
Io ho la soluzione per
Sì.
l'avanzamento delle slide.
2 minuti, 1 minuto, incominciamo. Già. C'è un collegamento, c'è anche il collegamento della... E chi è che lo fa? Bene, incominciamo mano a mano che le persone stanno rientrando, perché c'è anche un collegamento che ci sta aspettando. So we start and we wait the other people that maybe take a little break, but we cannot wait more because we are already late and we have to start. We have a person, she's connected and she's waiting to talk with us. So please, if you can take seat.
Magari però.
Esatto. Bene, ricominciamo. Grazie. Oh, thank you very much to be here. Now for this session, I introduce our speaker. First of all, Anna Grazia Laura, President of ENAT. Then we have Alessandra Priante, Chairman of ENIT. And we have Inmaculada Placencia-Porrero, Senior Expert in Disability and Inclusion of the European Commission. And she is connected. And sorry, Inmaculada, if we are a little bit late. But you are here. You can hear us. If there is the connection with Inmaculada, I would like to start with her. First of all, hello, Inmaculada. Hello, hi. Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
No.
Can you hear me now?
You can hear us?
Yes.
Yes. And now try to
I'm
talk.
talking.
Okay, we close the door probably there because otherwise. And so welcome, even if you are not really in Torino. It's a pity. We are sad because we wait for you, but I know that you had problems to come here. So anyway, thank you to be connected with us. Se chiudiamo la porta così non c'è rumore. Grazie. So it's important to talk about accessible tourism for the future. We already had a sort of overview with our institutional government, local and national here in Torino, and then they explain us all the projects they did and they want to do for the future. So I want to ask you your point of view, as you have a very long experience in this sector, and so what is your point of view for the future?
Okay, so I will focus in. I thought I was going. Sorry, my point of view for the future. I thought I was going to do focus a presentation on accessibility. That was going to be. So I don't know if I may share some slides, or you prefer that I just answer the question. I keep the focus on accessibility. Maybe as an introduction to say that the work on disability that we are doing at the European Union fully acknowledges the role that accessible tourism for persons with disabilities plays in order to participation, to have full participation in society, and as well as having accessible tourism has a role on socioeconomic development. In my presentation, I will focus, as I said, on accessible tourism and the accessibility ecosystem that we have in Europe. And sorry, I'm a bit distracted because I see that there is a message coming in my screen. Okay, so I will share the presentation. Voila. I hope you can see it in the screen, the presentation. So, no.
Okay.
Can you see it? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Very good. Very good. So I'm going to focus on the presentation. That, by the way, I thought I had 20 minutes. Do you confirm the time? So otherwise,
Also less because we are very tight.
Okay. So I will try
Probably,
to to reduce. Okay.
Thank
Good.
you.
So there is a lot of the last years we have developed a lot of accessibility legislation in the union. I think many of you are familiar with transport related legislation, for example, passenger rights, and some of the other legislation related to websites, accessible websites, and so forth. Now, we also have got, and that is really very important for the development, the regional development that has been, for example, mentioned at the beginning of, in the introduction of these presentations, where EU funding, like regional development funds or cohesion funds are used, and these are European funds. There also there is an obligation on accessibility as well as on public procurement. But today I'm going to focus on one specific directive called the European Accessibility Act, which is a piece of legislation that imposes accessibility obligations for certain products and services. The intention of this act that stems in its background from the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, where all the member states and as well the European Union are a party, is about having equal access. It's about human rights. It's about the right to access, also in this case, accessible tourism, and without discrimination. And in order to achieve that goal, that right, we need to have two components: accessibility and reasonable accommodation. And reasonable accommodation in terms of assistive technology, personal assistance, and so forth. But I'm going to focus in the first component, accessibility. And accessibility following a design for all approach, meaning how to remove barriers, how to prevent barriers that persons with disability experience when accessing to products and to services. It is important to realize that the two go hand in hand and both are indispensable. The fact that I am going to focus on accessibility do not diminish the importance of assistive solutions. Now, on the Act, what is covered in the European Accessibility Act, and I am conscious about time. Basically, as I said, we have got accessibility requirements for a number of products and services, and by imposing certain accessibility solutions, to put it that way, requirements, and the same exactly requirements then are used for other EU law. I mentioned already regional funds, but also in public procurement. In that way, we create a coherence between the demand and the offer, so that the same, when we talk about accessibility, we talk always about the same requirements. Now, going into the scope of the services in the European Accessibility Act, there are telecommunications, audiovisual media. There are certain elements or certain services which are of particular importance for tourism. First, certain elements of air, bus, rail, waterborne, and passenger transport services. Here we are talking about websites having to be accessible, mobile device services, so apps, for example, tickets and ticketings when they are electronic, real-time transport information, and self-service terminals. And I will say a little bit more about them in a second. We also have got banking banking services when they are intended for consumers. And e-commerce, whenever you sell online any related tourism service, then the e-commerce related to that process should be also accessible. And finally, we have ebooks. I didn't raise a book, but when there are books dedicated to tourism, they should also be accessible when published in the European market. When it comes to products covered by the Accessibility Act, we have got computers and operating systems and self-service terminals, and then devices used for telecommunications and for audiovisual media service, TVs, tablets, and so forth. Self-service terminals is an important part of the provision of the services that I mentioned before, relevant for tourism. Payment terminals. Tourists have to get money out of an ATM often, or they have to pay in a hotel, in a restaurant, whatever they buy in the street. But also tickets machines, when you go and you try to get a ticket, not only for the transport, but also, for example, sometimes to entering in a museum or in a performance. And finally, self-service terminals providing information. Please note that this is not only an obligation of manufacturers to place in the market self-service terminals which are accessible, but also for those providing the services that I mentioned. When they use these devices, imagine a transport service, for example, using a check-in machine, that machine that they use in order to convey the service to the public will also have to be accessible. Now, other elements related to the scope in the European Accessibility Act is the answering of emergency communication. So 112, imagine you are traveling around Europe and have a disability. The directive requires that calls to 112 are not only possible to be made accessible, but also the reply that you will get from the authorities will be accessible using the same means of information that of communication, that you get real-time text or total conversation. Other element is the built environment. The built environment has got a kind of optional character, meaning that member states can opt in or opt out for the accessibility requirements that are set in the directive for the built environment. But once they opt in, they are obliged to fulfill the accessibility requirements. And this applies for customer centers, shops, provision of support, etc. I mentioned already public procurement and other EU acts before. Now, what are the key provisions for services? Well, first, they have services have to comply with the accessibility obligations which are in the Annex 1. Once they do that, they get the free movement in the European market, meaning that they can be placed or delivered in any of the member states. And they have certain obligations for service providers related to the design and the provision, how the services meet the accessibility requirements. They have to inform the public. The obligation to check and ensure continuous compliance. It is not a one-off event, and to take corrective measures. And the provisions related to product, again, when they comply with the obligations in Annex 1, they also get the free movement possibility to be placed and sold and distributed in all the member states. And in this case, we have got obligations for manufacturers, authorized representatives, so different economic operators that play a role. Particularly important is importers. Importers, when products are manufactured outside the Union, when they are imported on the Union, will have to be accessible. Similarly, on services that are delivered in the Union, it doesn't matter that they are not originated in the Union, but when they are delivered in the Union, will have to be accessible. Products will get the CE marking, which is indicating that they comply also with the Accessibility Act. And again, we have some provisions that are about enforcement. We start with self-declaration, both for products and services. And then we have the obligation for member states to set authorities, market surveillance authorities, authorities responsible for compliance of services that have to check compliance and some of the safeguards. In relation to material scope, there are some exceptions for microenterprises, for services, and for products, some mitigated measures. And economic operators are protected with some safeguards, not exemptions. This is really important, so that when they are implementing the obligations on accessibility, they do not need to go further than the moment that it imposes a disproportionate burden or a fundamental alteration. But this safeguards does not mean, as sometimes we hear, well, I claim there is disproportionate burden, so it's not applicable. No, it is applicable to the extent that it does not impose a disproportionate burden. I'm going to go a bit, jump some slides in view of the time. So the directive contains certain important information in its annexes. The first annex is about containing the accessibility requirements. The second provides some examples, practical examples of those requirements. In Annex 3, we have got the accessibility requirements for the built environment, and then there are some two annexes dedicated to this declaration of conformity, both for products and for services, and some information on a disproportionate burden, how to calculate that. Now I'm going to start with the link with transport-related legislation, because the requirements in the Act top up, if you can say, provisions that exist in passenger rights legislation. It top ups the provisions related to accessible information. All information provided in transport will have to be accessible for persons with disabilities, as well as it requires, the Act requires, providing information on accessibility of the transport services. I'm going to focus on those elements of transport, but then also give some information about e-commerce, consumer banking services, and the built environment, as I said. In view of time, I'm not going to enter into details, but just to tell you that the definitions that we use in this Act are based on existing definitions in passenger rights, so that the sector, the economic operators, know what is meant by the different modes and services, mode of transport services that are included in the Act. The Act contains definitions of electronic tickets and electronic ticketing, and it puts not only the general obligations that are on services to be accessible, but it contains some specific requirements for transport. The same happens for banking, and I will give you some examples in a second, for which there are specific obligations in sections 3 of that annex. This is about the definitions, which are also for banking, which are also based on existing legislation. And the intention of those is enabling persons with disabilities to use services on equal basis with others and have a common level playing field. Here are some examples in recitals about what is a payment terminal, and examples of those different self-service terminals that require to be accessible. Also for e-commerce, I mentioned before, we have got some explanations about the websites that have to be accessible in e-commerce, what is e-commerce, and that the accessibility obligations concern the process of buying online, and the directive only concerns the accessibility of the products or the services sold when they are in the scope of the directive, in other cases, you just have to provide information about the accessibility of those products and services sold when they are available. Now, for e-commerce, we have got a definition in the directive and some specific provisions that I quote here. It's about that the information concerning the accessibility of those products is provided, that the functionality for security and the payment, that everything is perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And those who have got a background in accessibility will recognize immediately that these are the principles of accessibility that are applied to websites. And the last point is about methods, electronic signatures, payment services, also to be accessible. So anything that is required for e-commerce. Now, this slide defines or describes the accessibility requirements. Annex 1 is about information, user interfaces, functionality design. Annex 2 is section 2, of Annex 1 is about requirements that all products have to comply with. Section 3 is for all services, and section 4 is about some sector-specific requirements, like the ones I gave you as example for e-commerce. Then we have specific requirements for 112 and what we call the section on basically for procurement for other union acts like regional funds, structural funds. What is important is also that this annex contains what we call functional performance criteria, and those are general accessibility requirements to complement the ones in the other sections. And they relate to the functions of the design or the production of products or services, and they can be used as an alternative to the technical requirements, but also as a matter of result. They have to result in equivalent or increased accessibility, when there are some features that have not been covered by the previous requirements. So it is ensuring that products and services have a mode of operation that can be used without vision, with limited vision, without the perception of color, without hearing, with limited hearing, vocal capability, with limited manipulation of strength, limited reach, avoiding seizures, and use with limited cognition, and always ensuring privacy. This complements let's say the functional accessibility requirements, and altogether aim to have to offer to the consumer with disabilities a accessible product and service. I am not going to go in detail on this one in view of time, but just to say that the products, there are requirements about the provision of information, but also about the user interface and the functionality and the support services related, like help desk, call centers, technical support, relay services, and this is very important also in tourism. In services, we have also accessibility requirements about information, but also about websites and apps and so forth. I will leave here, unless I can use a couple of more minutes, the requirements related to transport, which is about the different elements. And I will jump to say that standards and technical specifications can be used to render a way of compliance with the requirements. Sorry?
Excuse me, Inmaculada, sorry, because it's very technical, and we also have here the translation, and you speak very slow, very fast.
Okay.
So maybe I'm
going to finish then. I'm going to finish. So just to leave you with the possibility of use standards, in the slides you will have which standards are available. I would like to say that the directive contains provisions related to enforcement and penalties. The penalties that have to be effective, proportionate, and dissuasive. But what is most important, it contains the obligation to have effective remedial actions. We want to have solutions when there is a problem detected. In order to implement the directive, and these are my two last slides, the Commission has, the European Commission has contracted a European Resource Center, Accessible EU, has created these centers to provide training, to support implementation, to provide guidance, and this is available for everybody. Finally, let me tell you that we also reward those destinations that are, those countries, that, so those cities that are accessible. We have since 2010 the Access City Award that recognizes the accessibility of cities, which is really an important prerequisite for having inclusive and accessible tourism. And with this, I finish, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Immaculada. Maybe all this information and all the slides can be reached from the conference or on the website. So because you're not here is not easy, and so sorry, and also for the translation that we have to do with the list. Now I want to ask to Alessandra Priante, the chairman of ENIT, a long experience also in your previous employee in the United Nations. I know that you are one of the first that accepted to come here to Torino when you know about this conference, so I know that you really want to be here today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, everyone. Thank you to Region Piemonte and all of you who have organized this fantastic conference. I was mouth open to see how many people attended, and especially the type of diversity of attendees. I think accessibility is something that you never cease to talk about. We must never cease to talk about. And we should do that not just in conferences. Conferences should be the moment where we all share experiences and take it forward. I would like to add one more experience that I had. When I had returned from my diplomatic role in the Gulf, where I was based for 5 years, to the Ministry of Culture that then became Culture and Tourism, one of the first projects I had on my table was the law on accessible tourism. Specifically, the proposal to introduce a star rating related to how much the hotels, and not only the hotels, also destinations in general, would comply to accessible standards. Why it is important to award? Because awarding is much better than punishing. And awarding takes investments into the right direction. The three things I would like to mention today, in the interest of time especially, is that, first of all, accessibility, and I'm not talking about, I will never talk about disability, I'm talking about accessibility. So accessibility is a universal concept, and it bases itself on inclusion. So we have to include everyone and exclude no one. Each one of us, in a certain moment of our life, we had issues, whether it's our knee, Zoritza, or our, I don't know, our incapacity, for example, to adapt to a certain food, or we, especially us that travel and work traveling, we sometimes have to face special requirements. So having an accessible interlocutor allows us to be able to have solutions. Having solutions is exactly what accessibility is all about. So in a solution-oriented perspective, accessibility means that each one of us at every stage of our life must be able to reach a certain destination or perform a certain activity. Or if not, we should have all the information ahead of time that this is doable or not doable, accessible or not accessible. So that brings me to my second base concept. I'm the president of the Italian Tourism Board. My main job is to promote Italy abroad as a destination. And what an honor it is if I can tell people Italy is actually a very accessible destination. Can I really say that? Well, not completely. We have spaces of improvement. But the main thing I want to say is that Italy is communicating well to everyone, whether you can enter a certain place or not, whether for the architecture or for the structure of the specific location. It is impossible to create a platform or to introduce certain elements that would allow everyone, literally everyone, to enjoy of whatever has been shown. The third element, which I think is not less relevant, is awareness. We need to increase the level of awareness of how much accessibility and anything related to enlarging the accessibility of every destination or every city or every village gives us the opportunity to include everyone. First of all, the citizens, the ones who inhabit the specific location, destination, city, village, wherever that is. Accessible approaches allow us to not discriminate. I would very much appreciate if anybody can close the door behind me, please. Thank you.
Chiudete la porta.
Thank you.
Potete chiudere la porta?
I apologize. It's a little bit difficult to talk with a chorus that also requires accessibility. So awareness in this case allows us to know exactly what we have in front of us, to plan properly, to create the right public and private partnership to be able to turn every single destination into a more accessible destination. Let me finish by saying I normally lead by example, and I've had the luck of being living for many years in a city that was and is an example for accessibility, and that is Madrid. Madrid replanned itself from including everyone, from the people with wider disabilities, like vision impaired or people that couldn't walk properly, to people that would require a certain approach, whether it's color, whether it's sensorial drive. This allows Madrid to be one of the most welcoming cities for all. When you go to Madrid, and it takes a little while to realize that when you're crossing the road, the beep, beep, beep is for the people who don't see. So for the visually impaired. And then you get used to it and you count the sounds just like they do. And the sidewalks are large. And there's an information where there's an elevator if I want to take the metro. As a result, it wasn't difficult for me to see people that were visually impaired especially, but not only, that were going to work, which means they also had a job, alone in the street. And this is fantastic. And while living in Madrid, I had a feeling of belonging that no one can take away from me. Another very important destination where I lived were the UAE. I think the UAE, Bahrain, Oman, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia are probably some of the first countries that became very aware of the importance of being inclusive, the importance of having the right information in place and allowing absolutely everyone to be able to enjoy also the theme parks and whatever were amusements. Therefore, a society that includes, a society that puts accessibility at the top of the priorities for investments, a society that recognizes the value of inclusion and is aware of what it can and what it cannot offer, is a society that can contribute to progress. I'm really proud of what Italy is doing lately. I think the growth of tourism and the level of support that we have from our government is unprecedented. And this allowed and allows the private sector and the local authorities to have confidence that whatever plan they have in whatever area of our beautiful sector, we can be very, very successful. So I think this is incredibly encouraging, and I'm specifically looking forward to working with all the big private sector leaders that have recognized Italy as an ideal location for investments, to be able to advise them properly from the beginning, from inception, that they should be accessible in whatever they're developing, whether as a destination or as a hotel or as a wellness center or anything related to it. Allow me to close on one element. I think right now we have an incredible challenge, but a great opportunity ahead of us, which is artificial intelligence. AI and digital transformation are what is going to allow us to put all of these elements together and let them perform at its best. So I would like to remind you that Italy hosted for the first time a G7 on tourism. And last year, and artificial intelligence was the theme of it. Well, artificial intelligence sees no boundaries, sees no limit. It's an enhancer and it's an empowerer. It's not going to take anything away from anyone. It is a tool for us to be used, to be able to become better, more inclusive, more aware, and more accessible for everyone. Thank you very much.
Grazie. Grazie, Alessandra. Very interesting, and I agree in everything you just said. So now I ask to the president of ENAT, thanks here and also for the support of the Congress. I know that you already have a presentation, but it's a short presentation.
Well, it's a presentation.
Very-
But I can. I don't know where it works. Yes, I can stop it anytime you say.
No,
time
so
all
I
the
don't
time,
want.
okay?
I give you
No, but
10
my
10 minutes,
presentation goes
maybe.
together with what I will say,
Okay.
so it's not really a problem.
Okay.
I hope that they can, yes, here it is. Fine. So, well, good, more or less good afternoon to everybody. Accessibility is the word that is on everyone's lips at this conference. Why? Because we, meeting here in Turin, recognize that accessibility is fundamental to make our societies inclusive, and because accessibility offers the opportunity of personal fulfillment to every one of us. Accessibility is the means to achieve full inclusion. We are on a journey which for some of us started decades ago, a journey towards destinations for all. This journey brought us to the landmark events which the World Summit in Montreal 2014 and Brussels 2018, and now here in Turin. I'm happy and honored to welcome and meet all of you at this, the third World Summit on Destinations for All. Accessible tourism, what we mean by that? Accessible tourism is the set of services, facility, and infrastructures that allow people with disabilities to travel and enjoy their holidays and leisure time without obstacles or difficulties. And let's see, what are the pillars on which a quality tourist experience is based? Good access is essential to ensure the comfort, safety, and well-being of every tourist throughout the tourist value chain. Accessibility must be addressed in the design of tourist products and services, not only in terms of access to buildings, but also in terms of information and marketing, transport, customer care, and specialized training. Survey of tourists with disabilities consistently show that staff attitudes and behavior play a powerful role in influencing positively or negatively the experience of a tourist destination. But we should ask ourselves, are the requirements still the same, or has the evolution of possibilities we already heard about this morning for enjoying tourism products in the current situation raised expectations? Well, the result of a recent study conducted by MMGI Travel Intelligence in partnership with ENAT Nectar for Accessible Tourism, us, and the World Travel and Tourist Council, and that was published in June this year, it is clear that some requirements still not fully met are still heavily compromising the possibility to travel in safety and comfort. The study highlights that while many travelers with accessibility needs are actively participating in international travel, they continue to face a range of, of avoidable barriers, including inconsistent information and the lack of inclusive services across destinations. The key findings list the most critical parts of the travel experience, while offering suggestions for possible solutions. Here we find out that the challenges are very often the same we already heard from tourists with disabilities. Accessible information. Near half, 46% of European travelers with accessibility needs take at least one leisure trip abroad each year. Yet, a major challenge lies in the lack of clear, consistent, and standardized information across travel websites and the destination website themselves. Another big option is transportation option. Transport remains one of the most critical pinch points in accessible travel, with over 8 in 10 respondents reporting challenges during their most recent trip. Accommodation features. Many properties omit basic details from their websites, such as step-free access points, lift availability, bathroom accessibility, or even clear confirmation that an accessible room has been booked. We have another point very important in infrastructure, destination accessibility and destination preference. Despite a growing interest in global exploration, poor accessibility remains a major deterrent for survey respondents. Many destinations lack features such as step-free path, ramps, lift, and accessible toilets, making safe and independent travel difficult. Notably, more than 52% of these travelers have taken an international multi-day organized group tour or package holiday in the past 2 years. This figure is expected to rise to 61% in the next 2 years, suggesting a strong demand for curated, accessible travel experience that offer confidence and convenience. The opportunity for destination is clear. Invest in inclusive infrastructure now, or risk being left behind by an increasingly important segment of the global travel market. From the suggested actions, a general requirement emerges from all of them: the need for qualified training to improve facilities, communication means, frontline and managerial staff. Training is the basis to achieve a professional understanding of the market represented by tourists with specific access requirements and offer a qualified tourism experience. Let's have a look at what factors influence the tourism sector and can change its structures and consistency. Here, let me mention 5 sectors, 5 factors: demographic changes, the growing number of senior citizens who have time and financial resources and available to travel for leisure, pursuing their interests and enjoying experiences with family and friends. Emerging markets. Here, I would like to include undiscovered and seldom visited regions and destinations which have many attractions and which offer experiences away from the crowds that threaten most popular places.
I really apologize. Sorry, President, to interrupt. I just want to take this opportunity to thank very much the President for the invitation. I unfortunately have to leave you because due to all the delays, I have to go and catch a train talking about accessibility. So thank you very, very much, everyone. Sorry interrupting.
It's okay.
And I'll make sure that I will have access to all the beautiful information that you're sharing. And
Okay,
congratulations. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So, well, emerging markets are really, let's say, important to avoid those areas that are threatened by over-tourism, and the need to take decisive action to ensure even greater sustainability. New technologies. We've been listening to a lot of speakers talking about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence and augmented reality, which, when applied to tourists for all, allow for greater enjoyment of places and facilities and the exchange of experience between tourists with the same access needs. The post-pandemic recovery has been characterized by the search for new type of tourist experience, which are particularly important for tourists with specific access requirements. Thinking about new ways of connecting with host destinations that are less impactful and more accessible for all. The tourism and travel industry are responding with a strong focus on sustainability to minimize their environmental and social impact. We see initiatives on how to minimize waste and plastic consumption in hotels, opting for small groups, locally guided tours, and visiting lesser known destinations and places. It may be also possible to look farther ahead through the concept of regenerative tourism. Regenerative tourism takes sustainable tourism a step further. Regenerative tourism involves actively improving the social and environmental condition of the host country, and here improving accessibility plays a decisive role. A regenerative tourist destination has the task of bringing together tourism operators and communities to build its offering together. A prosperous tourist destination is a place where guests and communities are able to give more to each other, generating greater well-being, economic, environmental, and social. A community that chooses its own way of welcoming visitors will be a more welcoming, inclusive, and accessible community. It's a matter of engaging in a dialogue with destinations to define the product together and encourage visitors to leave a place better than you found it. The European Accessibility Act, which Inmaculada Placencia has discussed at length, is an important milestone from which to start considering other components of tourism and translated them into European directives in favor of inclusion. However, in my opinion, it is also a starting point for seeking convergence with what is being done or has already been achieved outside Europe. Now we can, let's say, ask ourselves, how do we imagine the future? Acting in synchrony and developing cohesive activities across the various global realities, utilizing all opportunities provided by locally developed experience and sharing them. I would like to mention the European Commission Accessible EU initiative, which for almost 2 years has been working to improve awareness, information, and training on accessibility through a single virtual help desk and many awareness-raising events in EU countries. Funded by the European Commission, Accessible EU aims to support the public and private sector in implementing EU accessibility policies and meeting the requirements of accessibility directives with reference to the built environment, transport, information, and communication technologies, service for people with disabilities, policies, and standards. I would like also now to talk about something that happened strictly linked to this event.
Only a few minutes.
How many? Okay. Include countries that are developing their accessible tourism infrastructure and promote their development. I would like to mention the example of activities developed in South Africa by ENATHS, an initiative to facilitate and contribute to the growth of accessible inclusive tourism from Cape to Cairo, all across Africa. Among other actions to achieve their goal, they developed a course on inclusive tourism, field guiding, targeting aspiring women, youth, and persons with disabilities. The abstract was approved, but for financial reasons, the delegate, Dr. Tawanga Makuyana, was unable to come to Turin. This should make us reflect on the extent to which a lack of financial resources tends to exclude significant experiences and prevent constructive exchanges between different and innovative approaches to accessibility for all. Another similar example is the possibility of promoting accessible tourism in the Democratic Republic of Congo by the national counterpoint of ENAT. There are many progressive and productive ideas, but the lack of funds is almost an unsurmountable obstacle. I strongly believe that an international and significant forum such as this World Summit should come up with possible solutions that would enable these problems to be addressed. We should talk together and combine EU initiatives with UN tourism and other countries active in the development of accessible tourism, like, for example, those who started and improved the concept of this very summit. We should stay away from the idea of leadership, but build on a strategy of cooperation and joint objectives for the real benefit of everyone. Build beyond local and national strategies and look at the complexity of what should become an accessible system worldwide. It is the right time to create, all together, a solid front to address barriers and get together to identify and improve our strategies and solutions. If we will give continuity to the concept and objectives of the different declarations and action plans that almost every important event has released, Montreal, Brussels, San Marino, Berlin, and this one at the end of the works, we will succeed in homogenizing the understanding and development of accessible tourism well beyond destinations. Many thanks for your attention.
So thank you to everybody for your patience. Sorry if we are a little bit late. Now the program is going ahead. You already have the program. There are sessions in the other plenary hall here. And so see you later during the other workshop and session. Thank you very much. Adesso vengo a togliermi. Ok, ce l'abbiamo fatta.
Hold the microphone. You have a headset. Ladies and gentlemen, hello. Good afternoon. Thank you for attending this session. My name is Ivor Ambrose. I'm the Managing Director of ENAT, the European Network for Accessible Tourism. It's our great pleasure to be part of the organizing committee for this summit. And now we're going into a session on the future of accessible tourism, in particular related to the transportation sector. We're very pleased to have some very important, outstanding speakers today, who are three gentlemen from Italy who are working in transportation mobility for many years. I will ask them each to introduce themselves in the interests of time. And we have at the end of the row here, John Morris, who is from a Wheelchair Travel, which is the #1 wheelchair traveler website in the world. All of them very experienced. And so I will, without further ado, in the interest of time, I will hand over to Andrea Andorno. He's the CEO of Torino Airport, which I'm sure many of you have also experienced today. So Andrea, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
You can stay seated.
What's that? Oh, okay. So thank you very much. Yes, long experience in the travel business. I worked in the air travel industry for more than 20 years, before in airlines, now airports. And I'm here also, I happen to be for 2 years chair of the Regional Airport Forum of ACI, therefore taking also that role on a temporary basis. Should I hand over the microphone to my fellow speakers, or should we start the presentation?
One by one. So
Okay.
you carry on, please. No, you carry on.
Oh, okay. So how do I move the slides?
I'm not sure. Slide, please. Slide. We have a button for the slide. Yes.
Okay, that's going to be easier.
That guy's on the top of it.
Okay, very quickly. So I will be speaking a lot about ACI Europe. ACI Europe is the European region. It's the Airport Council International for Europe, and it is the only professional association of airport operators in Europe. And it represents over 600 airports in 55 European countries. As I said, I happen to be chair of the Regional Airport Forum, which is a part of ACI Europe. As a matter of fact, it accounts for more than 500 airports out of 600, and it accounts for more than 50% of total traffic. ACI Europe has consistently championed the cause of accessible and inclusive travel, working in collaboration with various stakeholders. It has the European Disability Forum, EDF, the umbrella organization of persons with disabilities in Europe. Accessible mobility is one of the priorities of ACI Europe Facilitation and Customer Service Committee and its task force on accessibility and PRM, comprising 19 airports operators, which accounts for many, many more airports. We have airport operators such as ENAT, which accounts for all Spanish airports, example given. The topic is very high on the agenda of the association and its members. But let me get a little bit more into detail. Here we have the most recent publications by ACI. I heard from the previous panel, we were talking about the European Accessibility Act. As a matter of fact, the association itself provided a quite clear publication with respect to the guidelines and the timing for airports with respect to the EEA, and we'll get into a little more details later on. Then there is something which is quite unique for a professional, specific industry professional. There was an inclusion charter. So all the members within ACI Europe actually have committed to promote diversity, accessibility, and inclusion within the European airports. That's something which has been achieved in January 2024. And also there was published, and those documents are all public available, to be noticed, to all the airports, but to anybody who wants to go to ACI Europe websites, altogether with the comprehensive guidance on the passenger with non-visible disabilities, because we do estimate at ACI Europe that one out of 4 adult passengers actually can have some disability, out of which 80% are not visible. Therefore, quite important to move also in the non-visibility spectrum. Moving forward, they talked about in the previous panel, as well as the publication within ACI of the European Accessibility Act. It's a directive which mandates accessibility of services and products across the EU, which is what's most important. It's prioritizing needs of people with disabilities. What are the implications for European airports? Airports must implement EAA provisions to ensure all passenger experiences are inclusive and accessible. Therefore, the association itself, it's really pushing, it's totally consistent, and Italy transposed the EAA in a legislative decree in May 2022, which entered into force in 2022, and to be fully implemented by June 28, 2025. Moving forward, the transport operators are required to implement certain accessibility measures, but the directive itself does not regulate the physical accessibility of transport vehicles, which remains under the regulation number 1300/2014 and national laws. However, the directive does apply to related digital services, and transport services providers must ensure the accessibility of digital information and ticketing services. Therefore, it's very important that all the digital touch points are upgraded. With respect to these key measures, we have therefore intervention on the websites, mobile devices-based services, electronic tickets and electronic ticketing services, and delivery of transport services information. TRN, which is the airport I happen to be the CEO of, which is Torino Airport, it was compliant before June 2025, which was the deadline provided by the Italian law, consistent with the regulation. Going back to ACI, just to show you a little bit how important and how monitored PRM are within the organization. ACI every 2-3 years runs a very deep survey in order to understand among its members, among its airports, in order to understand how the PRM passenger ratios are behaving within Europe. Here we have a quite simple chart showing all the airports by size. So group 1 means airports with more than 40 million passengers, and 6 airports actually were surveyed altogether, with all the way to group number 5, which is smaller airports under the 1 million threshold. Therefore, we can see that's within the air industry, you'll very often see a gap between 2019 and 2023. That's the COVID gap, we call it. So we actually look at the industry before COVID, after COVID. Otherwise, all the statistics would be affected by the fact that 2021 and 2022 traffic was very low, therefore not really relevant with respect to the statistics. Therefore, looking at pre-COVID and 2023, which was one almost normal year for air traffic, actually, we have a serious increase of PRM passengers. I see it as a very positive data, because it means that the accessibility is improving and people are actually using PRM services more than in the past. So you can see that it's quite spread around among all 5 groups of airports. Moving forward, that's quite a detailed chart that shows how the growth has changed with respect to the weight of each of the disability and PRM assistance services. You can see the wheelchairs, as a matter of fact, account for almost 90%. So you move horizontally, and you see that the sum will be 100%. You can tell that wheelchair accounts for almost 90% of total, but you see that other disability is improving. And I think what's important, apart from the figures, is actually it's very important to monitor, analyze these figures in order to anticipate the needs of PRM passengers. Therefore, by group, by assistance service, we can analyze and look how to move forward within the European airports. So now you have a couple of case studies. I think they could be of some interest. So we're talking about Manchester Airport. Manchester Airport has proved to be quite innovative. They have actually sensory support kits provided. That's for security screening as well as terminal. The idea is to offer security and terminal staff additional tools to help de-escalate or distract overwhelmed customers in stressful areas. Therefore, as you can see in the picture, they provide these sensory kits that have been created in order to provide toys and activities, and also the sunflower lanyards for staff to issue, earmuffs, and reading material. So each terminal has a kit located centrally in each security area, available to any airport employee or third-party stakeholders. The PRM services provider also holds a kit. Customers' feedback has identified the security process as one of the most stressful, so there are these areas have immediate access to these kits. So it's quite innovative. I think it should be, those are good examples that ACI provides to everybody in order to be copycat all over Europe. So the stakeholders are well, the airport, the airlines, as well as the ground handling agent. And the results was a reduction in the number of customers becoming significantly overwhelmed, improving the experience of those individuals, groups, and families. So this is a good example. And we have another example by Manchester Airport, which is the quiet rooms. So within the departures areas, quiet rooms were provided to passengers in order to create an airside, very quiet space. The quiet room, they are on the air side, close to the main departure lounge. It means after the security checks, the access is unrestricted. Customers can use the facility at their leisure without pre-booking. Are designed with a very thought-out manner in order to have a choice of seating, neutral colors, and dimmable lighting. There are no flight announcements in the room, only emergency ones. And the space is recognizable by customers who require it most, and not to be used by other not disabled customers. So this facility has been very popular and is greatly appreciated with positive feedback from customers who have used the room. It offers a discrete space where individuals and groups can better manage the stress of the airport experience. So I think this is another good example of something that should be copycat elsewhere in Europe. Then to get closer to Torino, I happen to be, as I said, also the CEO of Torino Airport. Well, since January 2024, we have a new rail service from the city center to the airport. Well, we were able to sign, I'm looking on my right side because Ferrovie dello Stato, the Italian railway services actually helped us. We were actually able to sign an agreement in September 2024 to provide an integrated assistance service from train to plane from travelers with disability and reduced mobility, because we both provide this service. And when you have a station within the airport, it's very important that we do act in a coordinate manner. And so Torino Airport is currently the only airport in Italy where this service is provided in an integrated manner. The agreement was designed based on ENAC's, the Civil Aviation Authority guidelines, with the aim of providing a more inclusive service and enabling smooth travel for all passengers. Under the terms of the agreement, dedicated and suitable trained staff will assist passengers with boarding and disembarking for both trains and airplanes. It's two different words that start to speak because of the agreement. The airport staff will particularly assist travelers to the interchange meeting point, where they will become accompanied by the train by RFI staff, which is Rete Ferroviaria Italiana, which is actually our infrastructure for the train services. And the service is available for all trains departing or arriving at Torino Airport Railway Station. So it is providing a seamless and more comfortable travel experience to passengers. And I think it was a very good achievement. Then I have another study from the Torino Airport, which is one with respect to our lounges, arrival and departing lounges. We've been somehow launching the Vola Facile survey that was in December 2024, and the purpose was the better understanding the needs of travelers with disability and frailties in collaboration with the University of Torino. This is why it's very important, because we need to identify the needs, perception, and experiences of passengers with various disability and frailties during their journey through the airport prior to their flight. You need to listen. We need to listen to the request in order to understand and properly address them. And that's, I think, the important message out of this business case. Therefore, what we like to stress, ACI and Torino Airport, mobility is a fundamental right for all, and it is a collective responsibility to ensure that airports across Europe are accessible to everyone. That's my final statement.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. I was very interested to hear you talking really with all our speakers here now are going to be talking about the practicalities of implementing the policies that you heard about this morning from the politicians and the civil servants, that is to say the people who are working in the public sector, developing the regulations, the legislation, the standards, and the community that makes the standards. It's very important that we examine now the implementation. So you've given us some very good indicators of how you at the airport and as ACI, the Airports Council International in Europe, is developing together to raise the standard of accessibility in airports. And we stay now up in the air with the next speaker also, who is working in the area as the authority that is monitoring the work of the airlines and air transportation sector. This is David Drago, who's from ENAC, and you can introduce yourself, please. And,
okay,
tell us.
I introduce myself.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I replace my president, Mr. Pierluigi Di Palma, because he is missing another meeting. At the moment, I am the Deputy Principal Director for Territorial Coordination and Right Passenger Central Directorate. And at the moment, we are involved in in promoting the right of the passenger according to the European regulation. ENAC, the Italian Civil Aviation Authority, is the body enforcement to overview the respect of the European regulation about the right of the passenger and passenger with disabilities. Which is our main objective? Our main objective is to create a more inclusive air transportation services, because the main goal is that the air transportation will be able to be efficient for all disabilities. Everyone needs to travel around the world, and I think the mobility is a service for everyone. Which are the main projects that as ENAC we are carrying on in Italy? Now we are promoting the use of services that can be useful for the passenger with reduced mobility to access in the airport and the airplane. But we have other projects. For example, at the moment, we are carrying on another important project, which is called Towards a More Inclusive Airport, which is my objective of this project. Create an airport, an infrastructure that will be accessible for everyone. Everyone can have his personal experience of traveling in an autonomous way, because everyone lives his disability in a natural way. And for this, it's important that the infrastructure are available for them. Other project is related to some disability, for example, for the autistic passenger. We put in place an important project to promote opportunity for everyone to know the airport, the airplane. In this way, it's possible for all passengers to know his experience and to have an easy way to approach to the air transportation situation. We At the moment, we put in place an important, very important cooperation with our Ministry for Disabilities, and we put in place a national coordination for all the airport services, not only for the aerodrome operator, but also the air transport operator and all the association or the organization that they are involved in promoting the accessibility for each disability. And according to this work, now we are putting in place some important project to promote some best practice around the Italy and around the world. For example, the experience that my colleague Adorno showed about Torino are some of these. And we wanted to create this occasion in all the airport and the aerodrome situation. And which is our project? To create a more inclusive transportation for the air, and not only for the air transport, but also for the aerodrome. This is our project, this is our idea, and we are involved in this project to promote this idea around Italy and around civil aviation world in Italy. And at the moment, I didn't have any other questions, but if you have other comments, it's possible to have some.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So I just like to come back to you on a couple of points there, because I really appreciated, we're going to hear about the side of Train Italia very shortly, but I really appreciated your note about Torino experimenting and developing new service together with train and airport. This is a really exciting development, I think, because it shows that mobility needs to be seamless, as we say. And of course, you've also emphasized that ENAC at the airport authority, the airlines authority, you are dealing with accessibility as a fundamental issue. It's a priority for you, not just because we have a lot of people who have access requirements, but because, as you said, when things are accessible, they are more efficient. And of course, this industry, the transportation sector, is driven by efficiency, and costs are highly important. Where the money is coming from, how you're going to spend it, and get the maximum benefit from the income that ultimately comes from passenger tickets. So I think it's very important that you recognize this and you make this a priority here in Italy, and spreading this message to other airports and other airlines throughout the world, working with the professionals, with IATA, with other organizations. It's a very important thing. So we come to the next case from the top guys here, and I have with me our colleague, and I have to get his name right. So it's Giampiero. That's the easy part, and Stristiulio. Okay. Is that good enough? And thank you. And he's the general director of the Train Italia. So something like that. You may introduce yourself in more detail, please. And tell us what's Train Italia doing for people with disabilities and others with access requirements. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the invitation. I'm Giampiero Stristiulio. Don't worry, it's difficult also for Italian people, don't worry. So I'm the CEO of Train Italia, the most important railway service operator in Italy, in long-haul traffic, in regional traffic, and now also with bus in our group. So in every kind of mobility with rail and bus. I switch in Italian if I can. Quindi grazie, molto importante essere qui, condividere con voi l'opportunità di sottolineare quanto è importante l'accessibilità del viaggio. Ed è evidente che un turismo accessibile, delle destinazioni accessibili richiedono anche una mobilità accessibile. Per Trenitalia questo è una priorità, lo facciamo perché crediamo che la mobilità sia un diritto per tutti, quindi il lavoro continuo è proprio nel nostro daily business, è proprio nel quotidiano. Devo dire che È importante sottolineare come, nonostante Trenitalia abbia fatto e stia facendo tanto in questo ambito, in realtà siamo anche consapevoli che c'è ancora tanto da fare e che questo passa attraverso un'applicazione continua di persone e tecnologie dedicate al servizio, con l'obiettivo di aumentare sempre di più l'accessibilità al viaggio. Importante questo, credo che in questo summit, come nei precedenti, si sia sottolineato come la mobilità e la mobilità collettiva, in particolare il trasporto pubblico, siano ovviamente fondamentali per il turismo accessibile e quindi per poter consentire a tutti di godere anche delle bellezze dei territori. E devo dire che questo passa anche attraverso una costante analisi delle esigenze, delle tendenze dei nostri viaggiatori, e queste ci stimolano per il miglioramento continuo. Su quali ambiti? In primis il treno. Abbiamo di recente presentato il nuovo Frecciarossa 1000, il gioiello dell'alta velocità in Italia, e nella sua nuova versione abbiamo aumentato, abbiamo dedicato tanta energia per aumentare l'accessibilità, in primis con nuovi spazi per le persone a ridotta mobilità, ma anche con accorgimenti importanti per rendere il servizio sempre migliore. Ad esempio, con il Politecnico di Milano abbiamo studiato ed implementato sul nuovo Frecciarossa dei pittogrammi per orientare su tutto il treno le persone a ridotta mobilità in maniera completamente, o con limiti diciamo assolutamente superabili, con queste nuove implementazioni. Devo dire che questo fa sì che in tutta la flotta alta velocità, oggi costituita da più di 150 treni, l'accessibilità sia consentita alle persone a ridotta mobilità, quindi sui nostri 300 servizi quotidiani sull'alta velocità questo goal è stato raggiunto, ma il lavoro è continuo anche soprattutto sul trasporto pubblico. Nel trasporto regionale abbiamo con la nostra flotta quasi completamente riammodernata, sono più di 1000 i treni nuovi regionali che circolano sulla rete nazionale italiana, lo saranno in maniera completa al 2027. Abbiamo progettato e riprogettato i servizi consentendo più spazi e più postazioni per le persone a ridotta mobilità. E questo lavoro è un lavoro continuo che richiede, secondo punto, anche un'implementazione delle tecnologie. Abbiamo la consapevolezza che con i servizi digitali e con l'evoluzione dei servizi digitali si possa migliorare il servizio. Da qualche mese abbiamo implementato ad esempio un'assistenza anche attraverso videochiamata gratuita, chiaramente con il linguaggio dei segni. Stiamo studiando applicazioni e sperimenteremo a breve applicazioni della intelligenza artificiale con degli avatar che in dei totem ubicati nelle nostre sale assistenza per agevolare dall'inizio dell'esperienza di viaggio, quindi dalla fase di acquisto e scelta dell'esperienza di viaggio, i nostri viaggiatori, ma puntiamo tanto anche sul fattore umano e quindi sulla formazione. Trenitalia oggi può contare più di 120 operatori che hanno acquisito competenze in maniera specialistica proprio per favorire l'accessibilità di tutti al viaggio. Nel mondo ferroviario, accanto a Trenitalia, che ovviamente fa parte del gruppo Ferrovie dello Stato italiano, c'è anche il ruolo importante di chi gestisce gli spazi di stazione. C'è stato qualche racconto prima, il lavoro dei colleghi delle infrastrutture di rete ferroviaria italiana è molto importante in questo ambito, perché l'esperienza di viaggio parte dalla stazione e qui c'è un'eccellenza che sono le sale blu. Ne abbiamo vista una prima dedicata al servizio e quindi all'intermodalità con l'aeroporto di Torino, ma sono più di 400 in Italia le stazioni in cui attraverso il servizio delle sale blu si può accedere al treno con un'organizzazione, devo dire, molto capillare e molto puntuale. È importante sottolineare che l'impegno da questo punto di vista è costante, soprattutto anche nell'innovazione tecnologica. Sappiamo che ci sono anche tante practice sviluppate un po' nelle diverse parti del mondo nel settore del transportation, e l'attenzione è massima proprio per cercare anche di portarle nell'esperienza ferroviaria come stiamo facendo. L'obiettivo è evidentemente quello di progettare e realizzare un'esperienza di viaggio che sia sempre più accessibile, che abbia la possibilità di guidare le persone, accompagnare la stazione nei nostri luoghi, le stazioni e anche ovviamente nei treni, e fare in modo che tutto questo avvenga con la massima autonomia. È importante, c'è stato qualche passaggio prima a riguardo, il coinvolgimento delle associazioni e il dialogo con i viaggiatori per poter migliorare il servizio. Questo lo abbiamo fatto anche nella costruzione dei treni. L'esempio che facevo prima sul Frecciarossa nasce proprio da un'esperienza di dialogo con le associazioni per costruire un treno che raccolga ovviamente raccolga le esperienze, i feedback dei viaggiatori, e soprattutto possa contribuire appunto a migliorare il servizio. Insomma, il lavoro è quotidiano e soprattutto nell'ottica del miglioramento continuo, con un obiettivo: il treno è sicuramente il mezzo di trasporto più sostenibile. Noi lavoriamo affinché diventi anche il mezzo di trasporto più accessibile. Grazie.
Grazie, thank you very much. I think it was an excellent presentation. I realized I could read it over there, so I followed you, and that's fine. I think, again, you emphasize the value of making sure that accessibility is suitable for everyone. And that, of course, reduces the need for special services for PRMs, for people with reduced mobility. Because if we have the right services in place that are universally designed, using the design for all approach, I think there's something very important that we can learn there. If we adopt a universal design approach and really understand that in the design phase, then we can make a real difference. I just want to take an example that I've encountered here in the metro system. There's no one from the metro here, I think. But I just mentioned how the metro works in Torino, because we have a gentleman here in the front row who's in a wheelchair. And he traveled with us yesterday on the metro to come to Lingotto. And of course, he has to go through a wider gate to get into the metro. Now, we were buying tickets as tourists, so we didn't know there was a special ticket for a person in a wheelchair. And so we bought our ticket, 72 hours ticket, and the gentleman in the wheelchair couldn't go through the wide gate. It didn't open for him because he had the wrong ticket. Actually, he'd paid too much, probably. And so we had to find a red button to call the personnel. The red button was not on the side of the outside of the station, but on the inside of the station, or the other side of the barrier. So one of us with a, let's say, normal ticket had to go through and press the red button and ask for the wheelchair access point to be opened. This is the thinking which puzzled us. I'm English, I live in Greece, I've lived in Belgium and Denmark, and I've never encountered this before, that you couldn't go through a wide gate. For example, if you had 2 suitcases, you might need to go through the wide gate. But here, it seems you have a gate for the metro, one for people who are visually impaired. No one else can go through that gate, but there's tactile surface indicators for those who are blind or visually impaired. They have to go through that gate to get into the metro. So I'm thinking, if we continue perpetuating this idea of people with disabilities always have to be treated differently, then it's going to cost more money, and it's going to leave people with disabilities behind, as this gentleman might have been if we hadn't been able to intervene and actually speak to a person who could remotely open that gate. So that's just one little incident that I think explains very clearly to me how universal design has to be behind the thinking from the very beginning of the development of a service or a product or the environment that we have to move in. I don't know if that message will get back to the metro people, but now it's done. And the ticketing is arranged. So we need to get the message to tourists who come to Torino that there is a better way, a cheaper way to get onto the metro than going through all that 5 or 10 minutes delay that we had to get into the metro. So I'm diversifying a little bit, and maybe it's not fair that they're not here to answer these points from the metro in Torino. But what we need to do, as you've all said, gentlemen, is to listen to the customers. And we have a customer with us who is an extraordinary customer in many ways, John Morris from the USA. He runs a website, wheelchairtravel.com, and that's the major wheelchair travel website in the world. He's a great traveler, obviously. He writes prolifically on his website, and he also works with the tourism industry, with the airlines and those who construct the airplanes and so on and so forth. So John, I'm very interested to hear your take on how the tourism and travel sector is working for you personally and as a tour operator as well. He's taking groups of people with disabilities on tours. So I think we couldn't have a better person to answer and speak on behalf of people with disabilities. Also, with this I'm very honored to have you gentlemen with us to perhaps take some questions from John as well, and then maybe we can have some questions from the audience later. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much, Ivor, and thank you also for mentioning the Metro Challenge. It impacted me as well on my arrival here. Would someone pass over the... Yes, thank you all for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here in Torino, my very first visit, but I am no stranger to Italy, a place that is very close to my heart. I'd like to talk very briefly, just in introducing myself, sort of how this publication that I created came to be. Like many disabled people, I was involved in a motor vehicle accident, which transformed the direction of my life and coincidentally, the work that I do as well. I got back out on the road very quickly after that event. I had always been a traveler. It's something that I was unwilling to surrender to disability or really to inaccessibility. My core principle is that disabled and non-disabled travel experiences should be equivalent, that our right as disabled people and non-disabled people to freedom of movement cannot be curtailed by any government or situation that may exist in the built environment. That is what drives all of my work and is critical to the focus that I bring to all of the projects that I'm engaged in. Some of Ivor sort of set this up very well. This is sort of the work that I do, and when it came about, obviously wheelchairtravel.org is my primary focus. It provides accessible travel information and resources to the disabled traveling public, members of my community, the community that I'm a part of disabled people with a spirit for adventure. I also consult within the industry, and now I have grown into offering tours to my readers. Just completed a tour in Greece just a couple of days ago. I want to talk sort of on a high level about the state of the accessible travel world, the industry, and I think that this can be applied to transportation because these lessons are applicable everywhere across our society. I believe that my experience and the experience of other disabled travelers is defined by a lack of consistency. No two destinations are the same. There are very few examples of destinations that are really setting the standard for accessibility. Most are catching up or just beginning to start their journey towards welcoming disabled travelers. There are so many differences in the modes of transportation that we use. I have less independence in air travel than I do on trains, and perhaps even less than I do on city buses, and even still less with respect to taxis. Our attitudes are different across localities. Our belief in independence for disabled people varies substantially around the world. Many places want to enforce dependence on disabled people, like here, perhaps in the metro, where I have to push a button in order to gain access. In my city, I can board the train independently without the intervention of anyone else. And that is an important thing that we have to push forward, is an acceptance that independence, opportunity, civil rights are consistent no matter where in the world that we are. We also have divergent policies governing accessibility. In the United States, where I live, the Americans with Disabilities Act is very different from the Accessible Canada Act just across the border or the new European Accessibility Act. There are barriers to freedom of movement. I've discussed that previously, but it restricts the spontaneity of life for disabled people. The tourism products that we take advantage of as disabled travelers are significantly unequal to those experienced by our non-disabled peers. And I often wonder, where is the customer service mentality? Why am I treated in an adversarial manner rather than with a helpful tone and a kind heart that so many other travelers are able to avail themselves of? Now I'd like to talk about some trends that I see in the accessible travel space. Obviously, as many others have shared today, there is significant growth in demand for accessible travel opportunities, and I think that it is this demand that sets a new mandate for governments, destinations, travel providers to step up and respond to the demands of disabled travelers. We have also seen social media's impact in advocacy. Disabled people, in many ways, are more often to share their experiences with the wider world and demand accountability for greater accessibility. And this is very positive, as we see on this stage today. There are a wider range of stakeholders talking about accessible travel than ever before. So often, in the early years of my travel, I felt that I was one of the only people talking about accessibility. And now we have the CEO of a rail operator on this stage. I am being welcomed into the largest conferences in aviation and even to the headquarters of airlines. That would not have happened even 5 years ago. So that is an exciting trend and development. There are some concerning trends as well. Oftentimes, regulation policy around accessibility lags behind the progress of technological advancement. And we are seeing that in rideshare services, Uber, Lyft, autonomous vehicles, the next generation of airline seating, being largely inaccessible to disabled people. So we've got to catch up to the so-called progress that is being made to ensure that a vision for universal design is incorporated at every stage of development. We see destination marketing organizations, now it's in their title, but they are focused almost solely on marketing when they engage with accessible travel at all. They have the power to impact tourism development, accessible development in their communities. Their members, hotels, transportation providers can benefit from accessibility training, from hearing from people within the community about the barriers that exist. And so we can do more than market to the outside world. We can look inward and see what roles we can take to promote greater accessibility. There has been a rise, particularly in the United States, in dubious credentials, verifications, certifications, badges, awards, and honors that deceive disabled travelers because they say, this is a certified destination. This is an accessible place to go. And yet, there are no wheelchair taxis. Public transit isn't accessible. You can see how this would be problematic. We have to embrace honesty in our marketing of accessible travel opportunities, because otherwise people will be trapped, stranded, harmed. That is an important point. We also see that disability representation continues to lag. In the United States, we say that 1 in 4 people have a disability. Global figures say 15% of the population encounters some form of disability, and yet the representation in the boardrooms and in the centers of advocacy and policy lag far behind that. And I also think that oftentimes when disabled people bring forth and encourage improvements in accessibility, we are told that baby steps are necessary, not large, giant leaps. I want the Neil Armstrong leap forward in accessibility, giant steps forward for humanity, not baby steps. I want to talk very briefly, but so importantly, about a shift in my own perspective. I now have a family. That is not something that I had before. Stevie, the woman in this photo, is my fiance. And Robert, sitting next to her, is a 12-year-old boy whom she adopted while on a mission trip to Liberia 8 years ago. Robert has cerebral palsy, and he uses a wheelchair some of the time. He is now my son, and I care deeply about the experience that he will have in this life. My perspective on accessibility and the importance of it is no longer a selfish one. Of course, I care about the world being accessible to me, but I care even more so about the world being accessible to him. And he's taught me some things. One of which is that I have greater power as an advocate, unfairly so, than he does. Some travelers are more equipped for self-advocacy. I can more safely speak my mind in places than he can. Part of that is due to my age. I'm older. Part of that is due to my race. I am a white man living in the United States. I think that all of these factors create problems for disabled people to safely speak their mind. I'm not afraid of getting drug off of an airplane when I demand that my wheelchair be returned to me at the door of the aircraft. But Robert, I don't know how he'll be treated. I now have a sense of renewed urgency. Baby steps are no longer accessible. So what can we do to push forward? I'm going to leave you with 5, honestly, quickly crafted, I didn't have my deck prepared until last night, 5 key principles for the future of accessible travel. consistency. We need to adopt human-centered, universal design principles everywhere. This shouldn't be an exception. It should be the rule. Barrier-free. We need accessibility standards to be met without exception. There should be no requirements to announce that I'm coming. There should be no requirement to push a button to say, I am here. I should be able to exist wherever I want. Accessibility should be intuitive. We shouldn't have to ask. And there should be a transparency of information. I shouldn't have to struggle to figure out what is the accessible route. It should be clear. If the only route is an accessible one, I don't need to figure anything out. Inclusive. We should account for all types of disabilities across the human spectrum. Race, religion, economic status should not be barriers to how we experience the world. And then fifth, and maybe most important, I encourage not only a global focus, we are at the World Summit on Accessible Tourism, but accessibility begins in our local communities. Each community is a destination. Even if it is not a destination for me, the traveler from abroad, but the destination for the guy who lives down the street who wants to go to the movie theater. That is where accessible travel begins. Those of us with disabilities, we start in our communities and branch out into the world. And if our communities are inaccessible, they can't be accessible to the foreign traveler, they can't be accessible to me, and they will leave me with an idea that perhaps the rest of the world is inaccessible as well. So let's start and advocate in our local communities and then branch out to share our vision with the world. And then finally, because I can, it might be against the rules, I'll leave you with a QR code to join my newsletter. I want you to connect with me, and I want you to learn about accessible travel and share what you know with me. That is important. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you so much, John Morris. You've given us plenty of food for thought, but some very direct messages about how we as a society should go about imagining and implementing accessibility for the benefit of all, and also especially driven by people with disabilities who are really still feeling all the problems and difficulties that you've expressed, that we've seen from time to time, but and also from our survey that we did with MMGY, Travel Intelligence, a lot of the same problems are still around. We still have 80% of people with disabilities who've traveled saying they have problems. It's too much, and it's a sense of urgency that I think should be injected into this summit. I will take your 5 points. We're going to present a paper tomorrow, which could be a manifesto from this summit. And I think we should include these 5 points somehow into the text, which we're working on with UN Tourism, who's one of the motivators for this whole series. I think there's nothing more to say unless we have any direct questions from the audience. We just have a few minutes left. So yes, there's a hand going up there, and somehow I'd like to get a microphone to you. I'm not sure if there's a runner with a microphone. Do we have anyone with a microphone? You could take this one.
Or a volunteer.
Emiliano? Sorry, so it's okay. Okay, we got that. Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. Should have a lady up there. I am from Barbados, Rosanna Shooter. We have a team of four members. We came, this is our third Destinations for All, having been to the other two. We came from Barbados to Gatwick. That was challenging. Even though we went through all of the assistance right through, they took half an hour. The pilot had to come off the plane, try to see if they could search for an aisle chair. And eventually we got one. So that was not a good experience leaving Gatwick. But when we came to Torino, we were so pleasantly, I was saying my prayers, saying, thank God. I saw two guys, we come off the plane last. So we saw two guys assisted with their jackets, and they were so warm and helpful. They really were. They had Chris. I'm here with Chris and my rest of the team here. They assisted Chris out of the plane. Everything was great. And when we got out, they asked if we needed assistance. We said no, because Chris pushes himself. So we decided, okay, we can go. We are following the red foot marks. But then when we went, the place was so quiet. We were wondering, wait, the airport is shut down? So we thought, oh my God, we should have asked for assistance because we didn't know where to go. There was nobody there to guide us. We arrived at a point where there were lots of stairs. Didn't know where to find the elevator. Went back around, couldn't find the elevator. The doors were closed, and then came back again. I decided to go down the stairs, get customs to find out where is the elevator. He didn't know because of the language barrier as well. He didn't speak English, so I told him we have a wheelchair guy at the top of the stairs wanting to come down. Eventually, we were waiting and couldn't wait. So Chris started to come back down the stairs with his wheelchair, which was very dangerous. But he had his mom behind him. So he came down all of those stairs by himself on his wheelchair. What I like the third point, intuitive. I think if we focus on just not putting services there because you have to put it, think intuitive, think we want just to have services that are provided and we don't have to go asking for it. So if there was a sign or something in English, you're an international airport, do not forget that you are having passengers, visitors that speak English and may not know Italian well. So signage is very, very critical. I dread to think what could have happened to Chris if he had come down those stairs and tumbled down those stairs. So I just wanted to recommend that you think about that strongly. I like your 5 points very much.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. I got it. I got it. Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, that's a direct passenger feedback. And while I'm on that subject of passenger feedback, I just mentioned for everyone here, ENAT has just participated in an European Union funded project about inclusive aviation, INCLAVI, we call it. We worked with IATA. We worked with a university in Finland called Haaga-Helia. And if you go to INCLAVI, with a C, inclavi.eu, you'll find we've made a training course there for the airline managers, frontline staff. We've made this training course also for everyone working in airports to give guidance and support for people who are working with the PRM services. This is made of 40 modules, would you believe? Because we've got some basic modules there, about 14 modules on the basics of people with different kinds of disabilities, what issues are involved when they're traveling, about the legislation, of course, in Europe. And we have 17 modules that are following touch points in the passenger journey, from when you do the booking on the website, if it's an accessible website, etc., right through traveling to the airport, in the airport, also onto the plane, through the gate, onto the plane, get your baggage, get your wheelchair. And we end with the final two courses, 39 and 40, are on passenger feedback and on complaints handling, because there are very strict procedures which must be followed for handling complaints. So I think we've, with that course that you can find at inclavi.eu, it's a free course for anybody working in the sector, students in universities. And we're rolling this out. We had Istanbul International Airport involved in designing the course, especially on the frontline aspects. And we think that could be useful for everyone working in the sector, not only in the air transportation, but other transport modalities. So that's just a little advertisement. I don't have a slide about it, but you can talk to me about it later as well. Thank you very much for this session. It's been enormously rewarding for me, and I hope for all of you here. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well done.